Hi there, this is Teri from Stamping Magic. Welcome back to my channel. Today's project is this card box. Now it will hold a standard sized card, but it will also hold very bulky cards. The depth of the box is 3/4 of an inch. I've decorated it using images from the Daisy Lane stamp set together with the coordinating punches. And I'm going to give you sizes for the UK and US versions. I'm starting with 2 pieces of old olive cardstock, 1 piece for the lid, 1 piece for the base. Now these 2 pieces are only a 1/16 of an inch difference in size, the lid being the larger one. Now for the base, if your base card is A4, you need to cut this to 7.5 inches by 5 3/4 inches. If your base card is 8.5 by 11, you need to cut it to 7 1/8 of an inch by 5 7/8 of an inch. Now for the lid, if you use A4 cardstock as standard, then this needs to measure 7 9/16 by 5 13/16 of an inch. If your standard card is 8.5 by 11, it needs to measure 7 3/16 of an inch by 5 15/16 of an inch. Now both these pieces need to be scored on all sides at 3/4 of an inch. On the lid section, I'm going to mark the halfway point on each of the longer sides. And then I'm going to use the 1-inch circle punch just to punch a half circle out from each side. And this just enables you to remove the lid a little bit easier. Next, I'm going to create tabs on each of the corners by cutting up the vertical score line and then notching in on the sides of the tab. So I'm doing a straight cut first of all, and then I'm going to notch each side of that little tab. So a straight cut and then a slant cut on the tab itself. And you just want to do that on all 4 corners. Once you've done the lid, you do exactly the same thing for the base of the box. So you just create those little tabs on all of the corners. I'm now going to fold on all the score lines and burnish them with my bone folder. Putting the box together is very easy. All you need to do is add glue to the tabs, and this can be wet glue or it could be tape adhesive, whichever you prefer to use. I like to use wet glue because you get a few seconds of slip time. So apply your glue and then position that tab onto the adjacent side section on the inside of the box. I need to hold mine for a few seconds just for that glue to take, and then I can move on to the next corner. Then you can do exactly the same thing for each of the corners on the lid. This is the card that I'm making the box for. It's a pop-up panel card using Daisy Lane again. I already have a video for this one and I'll add a link to it at the top of the screen in the information card. So the box is complete. All we need to do now is decorate. I'll be using the leaf image from the Daisy Lane stamp set, as well as the two main daisies, and later I'll also be using the small full daisy stamp. I've placed my stamp case underneath my plate to keep it level. This helps when inking up your stamps. I'm going to be stamping on some normal weight Whisper White card, and this measures 14.8 centimetres by 5 centimetres. If you're in the US, this is 5.5 inches by 2 inches. Now I want to do a dummy run first of all to make sure I get the placement for the leaf correct. So I'm inserting a sheet of acetate and I've cut this to the size of my stamparatus. I'm going to add my leaf stamp and then pick it up with the plate. I can then ink up the stamp. I'm using old olive ink and stamp it down on top of the acetate. And then I can check the position of the image against the cardstock underneath, and I was quite happy with how this one turned out. So I'm going to clean off my stamp, clean off the acetate, and then remove the acetate from the stamparatus. Now I can ink up my stamp again, and this time stamp it directly onto the cardstock. To stamp the leaf on the other side of the cardstock, all I need to do is rotate my card, and then when I stamp it again, it'll be stamped in exactly the same position as the first one. So I've inked it up with old olive again, and I can stamp it down. The next thing I'm going to do with this panel is emboss it, and I'm going to use my favourite folder, which is the Subtle folder. Once it's embossed, I'll layer it onto a piece of old olive that measures 14.8 centimetres by 5.4 centimetres. In the US, this needs to be 5.5 inches by 2 1/8 of an inch. The main mat for the top of the box is in pumpkin pie. Now, if you're in the UK, this needs to be 14.8 centimetres by 10.5 centimetres. If you're in the US, you need to cut this to 5.5 inches by 4.25 inches. I'm going to stamp this all over with the small daisy stamp and pumpkin pie ink. And I'm going to emboss this mat with the eyelet lace folder. I'm now going to create the flower for the top of my box, and I need to stamp 2 of the large daisies and 2 of the medium daisies. I've inked up my stamp using Daffodil Delight, And then using a sponge dauber, I'm applying pumpkin pie ink to the centre of the flower and onto the tip of each of the petals. So again, I'm inking up with Daffodil Delight first of all, and then using my dauber to add the pumpkin pie. And you stamp the medium daisies in exactly the same way. I'm using the new medium daisy punch to punch out the smaller daisies, and then I'll use our older daisy punch for the larger daisies. The flowers can then be stacked on top of each other in pairs. And you just want to offset the petals slightly. I'm then going to add dimensionals onto the reverse of each of these and stack the smaller ones onto the larger. The smaller leaf panel can now be added to the embossed pumpkin pie panel, and I put mine just across the middle. This section can then be added onto the top of your box. Finally, you can add the flower. And there we have it. The box is now complete. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this project. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe and hit that notifications bell so you don't miss out on any future videos. Bye for now.